We talked a little bit earlier about some of the things you're proud of, your time with the department, your 32 years of service. One thing that you were always very adamant about is keeping that overall post score at 80 as opposed to 70, which is the state minimum to pass.
Right.
I can't think of any other department in our area or office, when you're speaking of sheriff's offices, that had that level of requirement for an incoming officer. It's obviously been changed down now. Now it's at 70. Why were you so determined to keep it at 80? And looking back, do you think that was a good idea?
There's no doubt it was a good idea. And here's what I'll tell you about the decision. I mean, when that decision was made, to me, that became a let us stand out amongst the crowd factor. That was really what it was about. If our officers are good enough to come through our process and be hired in the Warner Robins Police Department and keep a higher average than the state mandates, that builds a lot of pride within the department. And so over the years, that discussion has come around numerous times. Do we keep this standard, and if so, why? So interview some officers within the department and they'll tell you they're proud of the fact that they were held to the higher standard. They're proud of the fact that it wasn't easy to get hired, and once they did, they could hold their head high. They're proud of the fact that they knew that they were kept at a different professional level. And honestly, anytime those discussions would come up and say, look guys, we can lower this score, they would always say, we don't want to lower the score. We don't want to lower the standard. We would prefer to be short than to lower the standard of the quality of people that we're working with. And now, please get it straight and understand, okay? The 70-80 score has nothing to do with getting hired. Okay, those people are already hired, in place, have passed all the standards, offered their job, work for the Warner Robins Police Department before that standard is expected.
Right, because when you get sent to mandate school, you are already fully employed.
Absolutely.
And it is a long process.
We train them prior to, during, and after. You know, we have enough instructors at the Warner Robins Police Department to teach every aspect of the basic academy. You know, we have instructors that can teach all the advanced certifications. And so we offer the people that come to work for Warner Robins the ability to have constant contact with instructors that can help them through some of those difficult classes that they may be having. And you know, we never made it to the point where you couldn't get through it. You know, I think if somebody were really, if they want to make an issue out of the 70-80, go back through the last 10 years and find the number of people, find the number of officers that were let loose from the Warner Robins Police Department because they couldn't maintain an 80 average. You'll see what you find.
I do want to stay on this topic of the department under your leadership for a little while here, a little more. You heard a lot, there's always been a lot of chatter, and it's come up again now, about a morale problem at the department. Was there a morale problem at the department while you were in charge?
Morale is kind of like violent crime. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. You know, that is a given. Are there things that you can do to affect it? Absolutely. Are there things that you can do to change it? Yes, there are. And there's only so much you can do as a department head or leader of any organization. You can only change and control those things that you actually have the ability to. Does there turn around to be a morale problem within the department? Yes, there is. And I guess my answer needs to be kind of, let me put boxed ends on it for you, okay? Look at law enforcement nationwide and see what the discussions are nationwide. The discussions are pay, morale, and hiring and retention. Go back through history and look at what the news articles or the studies were 30 years ago, and they're exactly the same. And what you see is the ability to keep the morale up very much has to do with whether it's my leadership or who's ever in place at the time, the leadership that works with you, but also the big picture. Let me put it to you like this. I know and I understand that the biggest recruiters that we have are our individual officers. If they're happy and things are good and they like what they see on the horizon, they like how the future looks to them, they are busy recruiting people. They are telling people, come work for our department. Come over here and check out what we have to offer. If they're not happy, they're not recruiting. So morale is in that same category. Our officers are very intelligent. Our officers are very connected to what's going on. The officers of the Warner Robins Police Department are some of the best, sharpest, brightest people out there. And they truly pay attention to the big picture. And if you want to look at morale, then you need to find out, do they feel like they're appreciated? If they feel like they're appreciated, the morale is going to be higher.
It seems to be that you're saying that they didn't, though.
They don't feel appreciated.
Why is that?
Well, I think for a couple of reasons. I think that you've got an unwillingness or an inability to put your money to what's important. Okay? If you believe in your law enforcement, if you believe that your people are important, that's where you're going to put your money. You know, you can do all you want to with a recreation project, but if your officers are not there and available to protect that recreation, then it's doing you no good.
You're talking about council at this point.
And so whether it's council who's ever making those decisions on where this money is being allocated, they need to be paying attention. And this is one of the things that I continue to stress. Recreation is great. You need a two-pronged attack on what's going on with crime. You need recreation, but you need the ability to protect those recreation facilities. If you have the best recreation facility and you can't protect it from crime and the people don't feel safe, then the people aren't going to be utilizing it. So go back on the morale side. If these officers see them spending millions of dollars on projects, and at their level they believe we're shorthanded, we're not getting the equipment that we need, we're having to self-fund ourselves because the SPLOST money has run out, then their morale is going to be low because they're not feeling appreciated. And that's just simple science. I mean, it's just truly simple science. You know, you can lead people by the hand all you want to. You can tell them it's great. You can tell them that, you know, the sky's blue, the sky's red. But unless you can prove it to people, it's really just a bunch of words. And I think that the problem that we fall back on continually is we are underestimating our employees. We are underestimating our employees, and we're undervaluing our employees, and I think that is detrimental.
You know, let me ask you, after we've spent some time on, you know, the department under your leadership, let's talk about how it all ended. You and I had spoken not long before, done routine interviews in the weeks and months leading up to that meeting you had, the closed session.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see any of this coming?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why?
Well, it's been a fairly long battle anyway. If you look over the tenure, you know, there's always some type of turmoil, you know, whether it's because of crime rates or whether it's because of retention or whether it's because of recruiting, you know, whatever narrative you want to make it for the time. And it's been tough. I mean, I've fought these battles now for a very long time. And I continue to fight the battles for what I believe is right for the department. I believe in what those men and women stand for. And I think that being in those battles, if you can't be pushed around, if you can't be bullied, you eventually can fall victim to those battles.
So you think you were, let me back up before I say that. Did you exit under your own free will?
No.
Explain to me how it all played out in the end there. What options were given to you?
Well, in the true narrative of the story, I had a discussion with councilmen on Friday prior to the Monday. okay? And without getting in a lot of the details, just timing-wise, I knew that something else was brewing with the council, that they were, or at least one of the council members was upset about some things. But instead of having an opportunity to answer to whatever those concerns were, I wasn't given that opportunity. So the decision was basically for me to do what's best for my family at this point. You know, that's how that decision came about. I needed to do what was best for my family. And if I can get any point across with this whole thing, I think that what people need to understand, what truly needs to be understood, is that if council believes it's time for change, then you have to honor that. But council needs to represent the people that elected them. Council doesn't represent themselves. If they're representing the people that elected them, and the people of Warner Robins want a change in the leadership of the police department, then by all means, that's what needs to take place, okay? Now, I can't judge their decisions. I don't know where their push comes from. But like I said to them in that table, if you want me to leave at this point, your decision has been made, I can honor that. I don't have a problem with that. Much like I teach my kids. It's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it. That's what makes the difference. And it wasn't that they needed a leadership change or wanted a leadership change. It's how they went about the leadership change. I can't for any life of me figure out how it was anybody's best interest to take somebody that's worked for the city for 32 years, put them on administrative leave like they've done something wrong, separate themselves from the department so that I don't have an opportunity to explain to the people that I've fought for what the truth was. They could have given me the opportunity to just retire, have worked through it for the next couple of months, started a search process, put some things into play. We could have easily worked it that way.
But that's not how it happened.
That is not what happened. And so it wasn't a matter of what they said was, it's time for a leadership change. It's how they said it.
So you haven't been allowed back in the department?
I have not gone back in the department. Now, by allowed, there's a difference.
Okay.
I can go, I can pack up my things, I can collect my goods, and I can get out of the office. That is, I've certainly not been kept from doing that. But I've not felt like it was the right time or right. It just hasn't been right. You know, they needed to go through a transition there. And what I don't want people to see is an Evans versus Wagner mentality, because it's never been that way. You know, I've always supported him. I've supported him through his decisions. I've supported him as he's come up through the ranks. You know, I've tried to train him and prepare him and have him ready for the day when he would actually take the helm. As a matter of fact, through many of the meetings over the previous year, you know, I've discussed with him very openly that part of me staying and being here as long as I've been is to make sure that as the assistant chief, he and the other command staff members who would want to take my place, that they would be afforded a fighting chance.
So you support him in the top job?
So I've supported him to come in for that role. Absolutely I have. And I don't want it to be, I care more about that department than I do about whether John Wagner's in charge of that department or whether I'm in charge of that department.
What did you tell now Acting Chief Wagner? Did you have any conversations after it had been made clear that you were going to be, I don't even know how exactly to phrase this, going to be stepping down? You are retiring.
I'm retiring. You know, the actual verbiage of what is occurring is I'm retiring. You know, I've got my years of service in that I can go through and take a full retirement, which sounds really, really great until you do the math, and then you realize that, you know, that's not necessarily the same as working. You know, understand that. But
did you have any conversations with Acting Chief Wagner?
I had a couple, yes.
What did you tell him?
What I told him was that he needed to be very careful and step carefully with where he was going, because I knew that it's going to be an interim time for him. And you know, we developed that department kind of like you would in the military or anything else. It's designed for change. It's designed for people to move up. It's designed for me to teach not just the assistant chief, but also the captains and lieutenants. It's designed that the lieutenants are working with the officers to make sergeant. It's designed for the mentoring and the up and down through the chain of command to make sure that people are prepared to take your place. If you want to promote, you can't likely promote if there's not somebody who's capable of stepping into your shoes. And so that's how we designed that department. We designed that department for the change, for somebody to be able to come in and take over. And I told him he needs to be very careful because that's a very challenging step that he's making. Through history, you can do the research if you'd like to, but a lot of people make very good number two people. They don't necessarily make a great number one man. There's a huge difference in the roles and responsibilities, the pressures, and everything that's put upon you when you are the one who is actually in charge.
And you're much more visible, right?
You're very much more visible. The decisions are yours, whether you actually made the decision or they're made at whatever level. You bear the responsibility. And it's one thing to say, but it's another thing to do. And so I told him, I'm here for you if you need me. I'll be glad to help you or answer any questions. If there's any kind of guidance I can give you, you're welcome to call me, whatever you need. But I did tell him to be very careful in his placement, and how they word his placement, because I didn't want him to be in a position during, whatever political turmoils that could come about. He's put in a lot of years there too.
Yes, he has. 26, 27, if I count correct. I want to just drill down and make sure I have this correct. You kind of chuckled when I said, I'm not sure exactly what the verbiage is for this, and then correct me and said it's a retirement. But it was, you've been in the city a long time, decades, much, much, much longer than I have been, but I have never, it's an unusual situation.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a leap to say that. When you were brought into that room, that closed session, that Monday evening, what exactly was said to you, that led you to think that I need to do, Chief Brett Evans, need to do what's best for my family? What was said that led up to that?
Well, understand this now in the parameters of answering the question, okay? It's still a closed session. So without knowing on the legal guidelines, I certainly don't want to step outside of that. But it was just very clear that the change was going to take place.
Let me put it this way. Were you told that you can either take a deal and retire, go on administrative leave immediately and retire, or you would be fired?
Yes.
Was there anyone at that table, anyone in that closed session who was going against that, who was standing up for you, or was this a unanimous decision?
There really wasn't anything as far as that kind of discussion taking place. It was, nobody asked me any questions about any, like I said, these other issues and things have been brought up. Nobody asked any questions. They didn't ask for any clarification.
So you got brought into the room and they said, here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
You go on administrative leave and agree to retire in about 6 or 7 weeks, or we're going to go back out into that council chamber and we're going to vote to fire you.
That's correct.
After all the time you spent serving the department, when you heard that, even if you did, like you said, see it coming to some degree, how does that hit you?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a punch. There's no doubt about it. But I even laid an option on the table so that it wouldn't look as bad as it did. I give them the option of allowing me to go through with a normal retirement announcement. So that at least it could look on its surface as though it was a mutual type agreement that we've agreed to move forward. I understand they want a change in leadership. I have to acquiesce to that. There's no doubt about that. We could have done this in a better fashion, and I think that's what my point is when I'm saying it's not what you say, but how you say it.
So are you frustrated?
It's definitely frustrating. What's frustrating is that after 32 years, my family deserved better than this. Instead of being the high time of your career where you get to come out and have a dinner and everybody's congratulating you and say, I hope the future holds you well, instead, I'm faced with the negativity behind you were put on administrative leave and your authority is taken away from you. That's the frustrating side of it, because Now, my family has gone through all these 32 years with me. You know, my kid's not as long, of course, because they're not as old, but, you know, I'm definitely married to the same woman now as I was when I started in this career. She's been through every step of this with me, you know, and even if you have huge problems with me, my family deserves better than this. So yes, that part of it is very frustrating, to know that you give 32 years of your life, to know that even though you do get paid, you're never compensated for what this job takes from you. You know, you never become a whole person again. You have no idea what it takes out of you to see those kind of deaths, to watch children who suffer. You have no idea what it does to you to watch families dissolve and fall apart. You have no idea what it's like when you're the one that has to wade in the water to pull a lifeless child out. You have no idea what it's like. You know, and I watch these people making these decisions about how it is that they want things to be led, and they talk about different things, whatever their issues may be. Then they've not walked in those shoes. You know, unless you've been in public safety and you've been the one that's had to walk that walk, you don't know what it's like. And so it takes away a lot more from you than people want to give it credit. And like I said, we could go through 1,000 different stories of the different pieces of life that those take away from you. So I don't want to sound bitter, but when you ask me, is it frustrating? It is. It's frustrating because you actually give your life to this job. You give your life to this community. I believe, and from what I've seen in the media since this day, from the polls y'all put together about, you know, between me staying and going and the different aspects of this, I believe in the general population, they feel like the police department has done well. They feel like the police department has been
And that's under your leadership you're speaking of.
Operating great. And so to just be pushed to the side, like I said, I live in that world because I'm not a politician, but it's a political world. I understand that. I live in that world. My family has come through this world with me, but they deserve better.
You know, you say it's a political world, and I don't think you're off base in saying that. You are not a politician. You are not a politician. You were not a politician while you were leading the department, but you were a department head of arguably the most visible department in the city of Warner Robins. You liaised with the politicians for many, many years. Like you said, you've been through 3 administrations now, 3 mayoral administrations. There was a lot of turbulence during the Shaheen administration. I don't think that's any secret. There were efforts to have you removed then, but you stayed through. Mayor Toms comes in, a new council comes in, a largely new council, and finally, this is the moment where the parting of the ways happens. Do you support this city council? Do you support Mayor Toms? Do you support the direction you see them taking the city in?
I don't support the direction that I see it going in, no. And some of that lack of support, I think, probably helps, you know, lead to the position that we're in now. You know, as I point out things, I point out weaknesses, or I'm part of solutions sometimes. People are offended by that.
What specifically are you referring to?
I mean, there's just different things over the years. You know, we had a situation last year with balancing the budget, you know, and they had 2 different philosophies in balancing the budget. You know, one was a council member's philosophy of balancing the budget in the midst of a hiring crisis and retention and bringing on more people, and he wants to balance the budget through freezing funds in empty police positions, you know, whereas, you know, me and a couple of department heads can sit down with the mayor and work through balancing the budget through either through cuts and expenditures and different ways of allocating money, and we're able to come to a balanced budget without freezing positions. And so that's a really difficult thing for me to answer, because once again now, if I don't get anything across, I do want to get this across, and that is, I don't want to sound bitter. I don't want to sound like the department head who has just been done wrong and now he has a lot to say. I don't want to say anything now that I haven't already said. I've been very vocal in these council meetings when I've been asked, what would you do, you know, and I'd say, I'll be your advocate to raise the millage rate. You know, tell these people that you will earmark this money for public safety, that you will make sure that the millage rate increase money goes directly to the police department for new officers and for raises and for equipment. I will be your advocate for that. I've said this in open meeting year after year after year. So I'm not going to say anything here that I haven't said in the past. There are better, smarter ways of doing business sometimes. I see those and I can understand the difficulties, I understand the differences. What I don't believe in is having it be one person's way regardless. And if somebody has their mind made up regardless of the facts, if somebody wants to come in with whatever ideas they think they have, as long as they're representing the public they've been elected to represent, then I support them. If I see them doing things that I don't believe the public appreciates or wants done, then I find it difficult to support that.
And it seems like you're saying that you were seeing that at the council level. Do you think that's going on? Do you think there are people who are elected officials who are acting not in the interest of their constituents, but out of their own self-interest?
Well, that's probably for a better time. You know, if the purpose of what we want to kind of accomplish today is where do we stand and how do we move forward, I don't really want to take a negative turn. And I'd be really careful with how I answer those questions right now. Because I don't want to, like I said, I'm really skating a thin line of I don't want to sound like a bitter former employee. I don't. I want people to know where I stand. I want people to know that I have fought the fight always for the police department and for the city as a whole. And I think that sometimes my stance against the politicians has helped put us in the position that we're in now.
And you say us, you really mean you in a lot of ways.